Hello. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about timelines and how to work with them and how to think about them and understand them. And there are some very specific pieces related to where we are right now as I'm recording this, but also this is very much to be a kind of an evergreen transmission, I am told as well. So timelines. I'm going to be talking about timelines in the context of the founder codes in particular, and therefore in the context of the evolutionary leap of humanity into Homo lumens, which is marked by, the hallmark of which is the access to and then integration of the union of the Trinity of the human self, the cosmic self, and the original self. And the human self, I think, is fairly self-evident. The cosmic self is very much like the soul or the spirit or the higher self that has had many, many lives, many experiences, in many, many different ways and shapes and forms and realms and whatnot. And then the original self is that perfect first coalescing of the unique energy that is you, that is yours, across all lifetimes, timelines, expressions of being, before any experience occurs. And so the image that often comes up is sort of similar to language that gets spoken about around the beginning of this universe in scientific discussions. And of course, human science doesn't fully understand this at all, but there's often this discussion of a kind of, first there was this big bang, whatever that is, and I'm not going to share any transmissions on any of that, but just whatever you may have received or be thinking about that idea of a big bang, think of that concept of just sort of there's first a sort of like a popping out and this initial cosmic primordial magnetism, which is the deep sacred current of life force that runs through and animates and moves everything that exists in this and all universes, breaks off into many different versions. And these unique sort of fractals of life force organize and coalesce into a very unique energy essence, and that is you. And that before that you has any experience beyond that, that is the original self. And the founder codes that came onto the planet and became available to humanity in the spring of 2021, they support this integration of the original self and the cosmic self into the human biology, into our human biology. And this integration then allows for us to have the embodied experience of our pan-dimensional true nature while here in the physical, here in the three-dimensional realm, here on Earth. And be aware of and remember the beauty of the visceral sensory experiences available to us because of these bodies, because of this experience and existence in this physical plane. This is not available in any other way. If you're not in the physical, you can't have certain experiences. And so kind of the glory and the beauty of that is why we chose to come here and be here, because of course, why else would we, right? It can be such a shit show in many ways. But it's also glorious. It's also beautiful. It's messiness, it's chaos, it's incredible, constant moving and evolving and changing and shifting and ending and beginning. This is the deep sacred current of life force. This is the cosmic primordial magnetism of the all of all running through us. So timelines. many possibilities exist for your being. And let's hone in for a moment just on your human self. So your human self can have many different timelines, many possible pathways, many possible trajectories of experience. And from a kind of a technical perspective, you could imagine that basically there are infinite timelines, but the probabilities are going to make it such that there are sort of, dozens maybe that are more, if you will, viable or stronger, have a greater concentration. But your energy, your essence is spread across all of these timelines, exists in all of them. And so where there's a kind of greater kind of coalescing, then there may be a higher probability of that timeline. So don't let yourself be overwhelmed in your brain by trying to really kind of, but what about the infinite possibilities and the this and that and the math and the science? Don't bother to go there, unless you're a really hardcore scientist, in which case, if you want to go there all day long. But for most of us, even in the most highly gifted, we're going to find a more enjoyable and a more useful experience if we just kind of take as much of this as is useful to us and then keep moving from there. So these timelines are like different, we all they all start from the point of birth, right? Or really conception. So the first point at which your essence came into the physical biology, right? And so then the timelines shoot out from there. And you can think of like a simple graph where there's a bunch of lines shooting out from that center point, that zero point on the graph, out and up in various slopes, various degrees of slanting. It's easy to think of them as all straight lines. That just makes it easier to manage. But of course, they are more curvy than that. So when the first wave of the founder codes in spring of 2021 came in, we received the capacity to batch process the closure of lower timelines. And so I'm referencing this so that those of you who have already worked with this understand kind of where I'm contextualizing this conversation. But for some of us, we have never gone through the process of closing a timeline. There are many different ways to do that, and this isn't a lesson on how to close an individual timeline, but it is useful to be aware. You may feel it when lower timelines close, and they may close for various reasons, but the hallmark of a timeline closing, it's important to understand, is that the you in that timeline died. And so you want to think about and treat your sense of your lower timelines with reverence and with love, because they are you. And we often hear people talking about like, close those lower timelines, like shut them down, timeline hopping, like in a way that has a lot of judginess and has a lot of like, I'm going to flee that lower bad shit and I'm going to like ditch all that and I'm out of here. And this approach will actually prevent you or slow you down from being able to do exactly what you're hoping to do there, because you're not bringing the kind of the reverence and the love to the fractal of yourself, the version of yourself, and all of the other beings that are impacted in that timeline. So, and this is also true in your cosmic self, also has many, many lives, and they all have timelines as well. So just to kind of mention that there. And this sphere of life concept that I have shared in some other places is very useful for kind of having a mental model that your brain can work with around this. So you can reference that if you're really getting into this whole idea of all of the different timelines across all of the different lives in the cosmic self. But so as we do the work of further expanding our embodied access to our cosmic self and our pan-dimensional nature, we do have the capacity, and we may be in fact doing the batch closing of lower timelines without even really being fully conscious of it. But we can also be very conscious and aware and intentional and kind of in our higher timelines. That is actually a better experience to have for many, many reasons, too many reasons to enumerate here. And so it is useful to come into kind of the awareness of the batch closing of lower timelines. Often the experience, so you may sometimes have the experience of nostalgia or a kind of a woulda, shoulda, coulda, or a kind of what could have been kind of feeling, even related to, like, but in a very disproportionate way. And this may exactly be a marker of lower timelines are presenting themselves for closure and for sort of absorption, if you will, into this higher timeline. And so if you have an experience of nostalgia for something that really wasn't in this timeline in your own awareness, right, that can be a really good one to be aware of, right? Or a kind of over or disproportionate kind of focus on the kind of, what could have been, because it was and is in these other timelines. And so the most important part of when lower timelines are closing is not so much how to do it, which is what people always want to ask about, is how do I do it? How do I do it? How do I do it? It's really more about understanding, bringing into your awareness, the understanding that your energy is diffused across all these timelines, is spread out across all these timelines. There's a fractal of you in each of them, like a little perfect diamond of your core energy. And you have that here in this timeline too. And so when you have the sense in any way, shape, or form of a lower timeline is closing, has closed, or you are actively working with a lower timeline to close it, or doing it in a batch process way, the thing to focus on is the invitation to that fractal of yourself, that diamond of yourself in that lower timeline, to essentially kind of clean off all of the gunk, all of the dross from that lower timeline, and to bring that kind of cleaned off, restored back to its own essence, fractal of self, that diamond, up into the one here within you, kind of in your center, in your heart is where I feel most of this resides, kind of in that center space, in the heart space. And then that diamond expands here because you are concentrating more and more of your essence, of your energy into this higher timeline. And then there's a flywheel effect that begins to occur. The more that happens, the more kind of refined and larger your diamond of self is here in this timeline, in this high timeline, the more attractive it is, and the more to your lower timelines, and the more likely they are to be able to, quote unquote, hear it as well, and to kind of hear the invitation to step up and out of where they are and come and join up into this higher timeline and have this experience here. So it's really about that invitation is really where, if you want to think about how to do it, that's the most, I would say, the most effective and loving way to focus your attention on it, is to send that love and that invitation to yourself in that lower timeline and let them come up. The bigger, if you will, and more concentrated of ourselves we become here in this timeline, the better we get also at discerning when timeline hopping is occurring. And we get to a place then of being able, then also later can get to a place of knowing whether we are on our highest timeline or not. And then we also get to the place of being able to create or open even higher ones. And so this is kind of what is the current piece that is the very important new piece to bring in for everyone. Before I do that, the other thing that it's not just about the concentration of more and more of you into your human here, that expansion of that diamond of you here. It's that creates the capacity around discerning timeline hopping and knowing if you're on the highest timeline, and being able to open and create even higher timelines. That is also a function of the integration deeper and deeper of the cosmic self. And then the original self, it's a whole other level that's going on there. But the cosmic self is typically, for most beings in human form at this time, the cosmic self usually comes first into your awareness, and that integration is usually what happens first, because the original self actually wasn't even available to access until, for humans on this planet, until April of 2021, I believe. And so that's a whole other thing that's going on. Okay, so remembering to have the reverence for these other timelines. I just want to really mention that again. All right. So as the timelines, as you kind of get things concentrated more and more and more, and you get more and more kind of skillful and aware in your kind of visceral awake awareness that you are in your highest timeline, then, and that you've actually closed most, if not all, of what you have been aware of, or aware isn't quite right, because your mental mind, your human brain isn't going to necessarily be able to hold all this, but you have this feeling of like, yep, I've closed all those lower timelines. I'm like really here. I'm all here in this high timeline. Well, a whole new thing happened. Cosmic and planetary energetics shifted, and will shift again many times going forward now, to create new golden high timelines that weren't previously available. Well, this is like, hallelujah, great news, right? Like, woohoo, that's awesome. All I need to do is just go get myself oriented to that new high golden timeline and I'm all good. But when you do that, what previously was your highest timeline is now a lower timeline. So the very nuanced skillfulness piece here is to be able to both receive, accept, understand, ideally in your own discernment or through connecting with like a transmission from me or someone else lets you know, like, oh, big new timeline just opened up. Great, let me make sure that I'm shifted onto it. And while I'm doing that, let me put my hand down to myself and invite all of me from the other timelines to join me up here, so that I keep the concentrated, non-diffused energy that is me up here. And this is not done in order to be selfish, and not that there's anything wrong with focusing on what you want for yourself and for your own experience, because certainly it gives you a much more vibrant, much more visceral, much more delightful experience to be super kind of concentrated in yourself, in your highest timeline. But also this is it creates a much greater impact for you to be able to have for the good of all of the other beings that you are connected with, which is all beings. We are all deeply connected, entirely interconnected. We are all completely connected. And this also leads me to speak to an issue that is very prevalent, that is a kind of old counter-evolutionary kind of trap energy, interference energy around evolution, which is that we are all one. This idea of we're all exactly the same. So if I'm saying something to you, it's just like, oh, me is telling me. We hear these kind of tropes all the time, particularly in various New Age style kinds of spiritual communities or metaphysical kinds of schools of thought. And this is incorrect. We are our own unique energy. We can return, we can dissolve all the way down out of all of our lives and have our cosmic self return back through kind of the white hole, if you will, where we access the original self, and then return back in past where that cosmic primordial magnetism came into being and returned back to quote unquote source or universe or love or God or whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. So you can dissolve, if you will, and move back into that source. But out here, and by out here I mean in any aspect of creation that you think of it to be, where the deep sacred current of life force is, you are a unique energy. You are a unique essence. And you may be having gazillions of different lives. In your cosmic self, maybe. Not just this human self that you think of, but the important thing that I'm trying to say is that I don't want you to lose your sense of the precious uniqueness that is you any more than I want you to ignore or not tap into the absolute truth of the vast connectedness that we all are together. We are entirely connected to each other. There is no separation from the connectedness. No person, no being is an island, right? It's, it can be an archipelago system. But you are connected to everyone and everything. And you are you as well. And no one else is. Okay, so the last piece is that as you come along in your process of being able to get into your highest timeline, being able to discern what's going on with other timelines, being able to work with the fractals of yourself from other timelines and bring them here with you, being able to integrate more and more of your cosmic self and then your original self into your human biology here, part of becoming into the early stages of Homo Lumens is that you then become kind of the holder, if you will, of the apex timeline for all of your cosmic selves. So now we're pulling away from the human selves of the Melanie timelines or the, John timelines into your cosmic being has many, 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 many lives that you have had. Different star systems, different planets, different realms, different home dimensions for your being's existence, different human lives. Maybe you've been a star, maybe you've been a galaxy, maybe you've birthed planets, maybe you've created solar systems, maybe you've been a grasshopper, maybe you've been an ocean. Any and all things are possible for you. And all of those beings, all of those fractals of your cosmic being are also experiencing their own kind of pathways and evolution and timelines. And as you here in this human move into this apex role, it means that you are kind of the leader of all of these versions of your true essence. And in essence, therefore, there is no other place to go for the final kind of, here's how it works, or here's the answer to everything. That doesn't mean that there isn't extraordinary wisdom, experience, and skill set, and capacity, and magic available to you from these other lives, these other selves, beyond the comprehension of 99% of the human race at this time. For sure. But there can be times when I have seen this in myself and in others, when you get to a point of integration of cosmic and original self, that you realize even your cosmic self doesn't always have all the answers. And so instead of your looking, quote unquote, up to your cosmic self to give you the answers, or your counsel, you may work with a council. Many of us work with councils of other beings that help us. I am part of a council of 12. Instead of looking up to them for guidance, over time, the experience is more like you're on kind of a team with them and you're all together, working together, kind of on the whatever the experience is, whatever the thing is, this kind of evolutionary journey, and the work that you're here to do, whatever that is. And then you move into, you're actually kind of the leader of the council. And so then they're sort of all trying to help you in this experience, but from that role of being the leader. And it is one of the reasons why so many are increasingly drawn towards entrepreneurial ventures. There are many kind of levels on which that's an obvious, of course, that's why people are doing it. And I've spoken about those and we can talk about them again. But fundamentally, at the core, it's this drive to have your human external circumstances match up with the inner being. And that means being the leader and going and carving your own path. And there isn't anybody to really tell you how to do all of that, right? But you can have people on your team who are bringing in amazing skill sets that you don't have and bringing that in to help, right? So, okay, well, that could be like a whole other, and should be and is a whole other conversation. But I wanted you to have this piece about, at this kind of rarefied level, pay attention with reverence and love to timelines that you are closing, and learn how to bring that consolidation and concentration of yourself, of that diamond of you, into here in your highest timeline as you go, so that you're essentially kind of closing the doors as you move through them. So, oh, look, this whole new door just opened up for this higher timeline that we didn't even think was going to be an option. Great. Let's not just run through it. Let's also close that door. And this allows you to continue to have access to your highest, deepest, most powerful, most potent self, which is also what then creates the most delightful experience. All right, I hope that this is lovely and helpful and wonderful, and also makes a little bit more clarity for you around what timelines are and how they work as well. It's a topic that we could get into forever and ever and ever. I love you, and I thank you for your light in the world, and keep on going, baby. Keep on singing, keep on dancing. I love you.